I'm Duncan McLeod, and this is TCS, the TechCentral Show. You know where to subscribe by now, but if you're new in these parts, youtube.com/TechCentral is the address. Hit that subscribe button, hit the bell icon, and you'll never miss another episode. You can also get our newsletter delivered to your inbox every morning, 5 a.m. at techcentral.co.za/newsletter. Now, Woolies shoppers may be interested in our next story, a company called Everlectric, which describes itself as an EV as a service startup, how do you pronounce it? EVaaS.
EVaaS, Electric Vehicle as a Service.
As a service.
Yeah.
You've just concluded an interesting agreement with Woolworths to supply a fleet of electric vans for food delivery and other purposes within the Woolworths stable. And to chat about all of this, I'm joined in the TechCentral studio by, let me try and get this right, Ndia Magadagela.
Well done.
Thank you. The company's CEO and co-founder. Ndia, welcome. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Duncan, for having me here.
Tell me a bit about Everlectric and where the idea for the business came from.
Yeah, so we started in South Africa in around 2018. That's when we went into full force into research into the industry, into electric vehicles.
Who is we?
We, so it's myself, Ndia Magadagela, co-founder. I've got two other partners, Wesley van der Walt and Paul Plummer. We all met during articles. We were at Deloitte together doing CA articles many, many years ago. And over the years, we always spoke about the fact that we will start a business together, and the electric mobility section of the market really just interested us, and we started in 2018.
So you're a bunch of friends who decided to go into business together.
Yeah, a bunch of friends, initially colleagues, then became good friends, and then now we're business partners.
So how many of you are there in the founders of the business?
Three of us.
Three of you, and the other two are? What are their names?
Wesley van der Walt and Paul Plummer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So going for about 2023, 5 years now.
Yeah, almost 5 years, yeah.
What is your background? You said you were doing your articles at Deloitte. What were you studying towards? What were you hoping to become before you decided to go into entrepreneurism?
So I'm a chartered accountant by training. So I was at Deloitte, and then I went over to the Industrial Development Corporation. So I was a deal maker actually all my corporate life. And then I was at Momentum Metropolitan in their mergers and acquisitions unit as well, just before I left to start to join Everlectric. So when it was incorporated, I decided to sort of move over and focus on entrepreneurship.
Okay, so while you were at the IDC, you saw these startups being funded, and you thought, well, that could be me.
It could be me, but I mean, sometimes you look at it and you think I could also run away from this, But I think we chose to.
It's a lot of hard work starting a company.
Definitely. Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, so you've done several proofs of concept since you launched the business. Take me through the sort of timeline and what you've been doing, and how maybe a brief summary of what led up to the deal with Woolworths.
Yeah. So we do R&D. We go around the world. We try and look for products like electric vehicles that would be fit for purpose for delivery players specifically. And then in 2019, we then get in touch with the business called SAIC, which is where we got our electric panel van from. SAIC.
This is a Chinese vehicle manufacturer.
Chinese vehicle manufacturer, the fourth largest manufacturer of electric vehicles globally, second manufacturer of vehicles, biggest manufacturer of vehicles globally as well. So, in terms of internal combustion engines. So we obviously needed to find a product that will not fall apart. And so that's why we went with guys that are reputable. So, I mean, that was sort of the genesis of the business. There were kind of a few things that we needed to put down. Firstly, get a good product that we can put on South African roads. Secondly, as a startup, we needed to raise the funding to buy those vehicles, and then we needed to find clients. And so we came across Woolworths as a client through DSV, and others that will also be coming out with public announcements probably in the next couple of weeks. So we'll just leave that. You'll be the first one to know when they do come out. But then our relationship with Woolworths started 2 years ago when we did bring in some of these electric panel vans. And we started to run a proof of concept in South Africa with Woolworths and other clients.
Okay.
And really just to validate the product on South African roads with all the challenges that we have, in South Africa.
And I have to ask, and I'm sure you get this question in every interview, but I have to ask it anyway.
Yeah.
South Africa has stage 6 load shedding currently. Are you mad? Electric panel vans, electric delivery vehicles in a market where there's virtually no electricity. Aren't you asking on a hiding to nothing here?
So yes, very valid question. And I think it wouldn't be an EV discussion in South Africa without asking about load shedding. We've been running for the last 2 years. And I can tell you that we've had 100% operational uptime, even in the worst of load shedding. And there's a couple of things that make that possible.
Okay.
Firstly, we, as much as possible, we are connected to renewable energy. So we will connect to the solar rooftop that is, put down by our clients as a go-to, sort of position. We try as much as possible to keep it as green as possible. If not, then we schedule around load shedding. So we always use the analogy of cell phones that you and I, we keep our cell phones charged even with load shedding because you know what the schedule of load shedding is, right? And that's how we've been able to sort of schedule around it. If we know that electricity will not be available between this and this time, then we are able to let our clients know when to charge. But how do we let them know? We are also connected to our vehicles and chargers in real time through our Internet of Things layer. So, I think in 2023, you cannot really run a business manually anymore. Yeah. You do have to have some sort of, view of what the vehicles and what the chargers are doing. So we're able to optimize for their charging.
So you've got some sort of IoT device that's installed in each of these vehicles that sends telemetry data back to your data center or your central point. And what does that data actually tell you? It's the charge level of the vehicle. What else? What other information?
Yeah, so it will tell me the charge level of the vehicle. It will tell me how much carbon my client is saving, because that is important for the likes of Woolworths to also report on. But it will also tell me to tell my driver if they are now about to run out of charge, and then I will route them to the nearest charger, which is outside of my network. So there are other charge providers in the country, the likes of grid cars, etc. I'm able to route my vehicles to some of those chargers if they are too far from my charger.
Right.
So, we are at version 0.01 of our IoT layer building of this, back end. But so far, it's really worked. And I think we will be able to come up with a really good device that can actually help other players or other fleet managers in this industry in the future.
So are you building this technology in-house?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So what we've done is we've taken the best of other technologies that support EV, electric vehicles, and we've put it together, but we're also building on the back end on those so that we have a product that is customized for South African fleets and for our clients.
Amazing.
As well.
Okay. So what is Woolworths actually using these vehicles to do?
So they have taken half of their food delivery fleet electric. So
half of it?
Half of it, yeah. So they are now sitting at 41 vehicles. Most of them are in Gauteng, and there's about 11 in Cape Town.
And these are all SAIC
Maxes, 1-ton panel vans with 5 cubes of volumetry space at the back. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay. And is the intention for Woolworths to replace its ICE or internal combustion engine vehicles in their entirety at some point with EVs?
Yes, that is their intention. They do intend to move also to Durban, etc. But I think it's important, maybe while we're talking about replacing an entire fleet, just also for other fleet managers that might be watching this recording. What's important for us is not that fleet managers replace their entire fleets. There have to be a couple of things that make sense before they decide to do that. So firstly, operationally, it shouldn't be that they have to change too much. So if they were able to do 300 kilometers on an ICE vehicle, they should be able to do the same on an electric vehicle.
And can they?
They can.
300 kilometers
300
of range.
kilometers of range. And for urban logistics, they are able to do that. So
does that typically last a whole day?
It typically lasts a whole day. At times, we've seen clients not even charging overnight on some days and kind of skipping a day because, it depends on the routes that they are doing. So before we introduce this solution to any prospective client, we always sit down and say, which of your vehicles are doing the higher number of kilometers, which are within the 300 range, because there's a certain point where if you're doing enough kilometers, then you're at parity with your ICE vehicle or you're saving money. But if you're doing way less kilometers than that, then we suggest that you don't just go for electric just because you want to go green, but do it when it makes sense, financially as well.
I was going to ask if Woolworths is doing this for financial reasons or whether it's because of its ESG requirements.
Well, it's both. We've proved it in the last 2 years that they're able to save money, with going electric. I mean, the analogy being the electric vehicle itself is a lot more expensive, right? There's 40% of import duties levied on the cost of an electric vehicle, but the running costs are so much lower. So if you had to draw a graph between that and just the kilometers you do, there's a certain crossover point where, because of the running cost being much lower, the entire solution becomes cheaper to run on a total cost of ownership
Despite
level.
the taxes.
Despite the taxes. So that's exactly. So the reason why Woolworths didn't with a wand just kind of change the entire fleet to be electric is because they needed to make sure that operationally it doesn't fall over, but financially it makes sense. So they only went with the fleet or the vehicles in their fleet that do enough amount of kilometers, and then also technically it just made sense.
Just as an aside, we've seen the motoring industry being heavily critical of the government over the import taxes on electric vehicles. Specifically, there's been a lot of criticism of the Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition for not moving faster to deal with this issue. In your view, if that disparity between ICE vehicles and EVs didn't exist, in other words, if EVs were not being taxed so highly, to what extent do you think corporate South Africa would be adopting EVs more than they are today?
I think a whole lot more. I almost think that you would have had mass adoption of electric mobility already. And
even with load shedding?
Even with load shedding, because I think once you've been in these electric vehicles and you actually see the efficiencies of the vehicle, not just for a commercial fleet, but also for you and I day to day, just the efficiencies for urban driving. I think it would be a no-brainer that somebody would move electric. I think it's the import duties that are a deterrent, but also it's the charging infrastructure. Yes, they have been growing over time. You will hear that there's maybe about 250 chargers countrywide as we speak right now. But I think if government moved on the import duties and reduction of those, even the infrastructure side would pick up, because it wouldn't be a case of charging infrastructure providers building the infrastructure and hoping that they will come. It would be guaranteed that the people will come and they will mass adopt this. So, I mean, I almost want to say I understand why the policy framework was sort of set up that the way that it was in the past, because it was for the protection of our manufacturing base of ICE vehicles in the country, etc. Right. But I think we need to now move to a point where we realize that the markets that we do export to as South Africa, being Europe and the UK, etc., have said that they do not want internal combustion engines post 2030, a lot of those markets. So it's no longer a choice whether government wants to go electric. It's you're going to erode your export base just in this industry.
We just need more speed.
We need speed. We need decisions to be made quicker.
Yeah. My understanding is that when this was introduced about 20 years ago in the early 2000s, that it was done to tax golf carts.
Yes. Or electric shavers, or it was seen as a luxury good, and
exactly.
That's why
it was a luxury good, and therefore it must attract the maximum
ad valorem taxes and all of that.
And the market has changed, but the policy hasn't. Interesting.
It's very interesting.
Now you're working with a company called DSV with Woolworths. Who is DSV, and what's the relationship there?
Yeah, so DSV is the logistics partner for Woolworths.
Okay.
And so we work with both DSV. We're almost like a subcontractor to DSV, who then are contracted to Woolworths to provide for all their...
DSV is quite a big logistics company. I've seen their brand around town.
Huge... I think they're Danish incorporated. And
okay. They're a global company. Okay. And just to understand the logistics, probably not a good word in this context, but to understand should I have a clearer picture? These 41 vehicles that are currently in the fleet, are they being charged at one location overnight? Are they all over the country? How do you manage that side of things? I mean, do these vehicles get returned to stores, to some central depot?
So as a start, just where we are in electric mobility in the country, our business model is to provide a full maintenance lease to our clients. So we provide the vehicle, the charging infrastructure, the Internet of Things layer, and the maintenance, all in to take the headache out of out of adopting electric mobility.
Sure.
So I've mentioned that some of them are in Cape Town, and some of these vehicles are actually in Johannesburg. Yes. So they are then charged. The Joburg ones will be charged in one location overnight or during the day, depending on how you do that. But that IoT layer also is able to sort of optimize the charging, right? And that was like, let's say, step one for the business, just to get the electric mobility going. But what we are seeing now is that if the next part would be to increase our infrastructure around certain rings, let's say within Johannesburg, where if a Woolworths vehicle leaves, let's say, the airport area and goes out to Eastgate or Southgate or whatever, there's a charger there.
Or can be left there overnight.
So they could charge there and then come back to base, or they could use any other charger with our expanding infrastructure around Gauteng and Cape Town. Then they would be able to use the other chargers. So that is how we are managing it for now. But I mean, I suppose for 41 vehicles, it's still quite easy. But I mean, we are thinking about as it grows, when you've got 1,000 vehicles, you need to sort of, decentralize where the grids, the charging grids are, just also to optimize for load shedding and things like that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And we've seen some companies, I know we cover the TechCentral, we cover tech, IT, and data centers particularly are looking at wheeling arrangements where they source power from solar farms in the Northern Cape or the Eastern Cape, wind farms as well, and then wheel that across the Eskom grid so that they meet their carbon emission requirements, et cetera, et cetera. Is that something that you guys have looked at all? Is wheeling an option for your business?
Most definitely. We always say that if wheeling becomes legal and anybody can get a license, etc., we will be one of the biggest off-takers of that renewable energy coming from those things. I think the one thing that we haven't touched on is, even though we do use the grid to power our vehicles at times, where we use the sun or we use the grid, we also purchase what they call renewable energy certificates, which means you buy in bulk the right to use and offset
carbon credits.
There's a little bit of a difference between carbon credits and renewable energy certificates, where even though I'm charging off the grid, I've purchased a bulk number of renewable energy certificates, which means the actual electricity that I'm using in my vehicles is offset, and I can then say it's designated and it was used from a solar farm. We've chosen a solar farm out in the Northern Cape to ensure that our solution is green. So even though we're charging off the grid, the electricity that we are using is we offset with RECs.
And does it make sense for you to have battery storage in your facilities as well? Because obviously at night, when I imagine a lot of these vehicles are parked, is at night when the sun isn't shining, so you're not getting that energy directly from the sun. Are you able to? Is it financially feasible to store that energy and then charge up the vehicles with the stored energy from battery?
Until now, I wouldn't say it's feasible because of the cost of battery storage.
Only too well.
So it would really put a strain on the business case. But we have seen the prices of batteries coming down, and I think maybe over time it would be an option for us to do that. But the moment wheeling becomes a thing, then we can then just rely more that way. But for now, we have to rely on the sun and to keep also the price as the cost as low as possible.
Okay. I want to explore a little bit more on the IoT side of things and the telematics side of things. You can actually do a lot with this technology remotely. For example, you can You can govern the speed of the vehicles,
Yes, exactly.
and other things. Just take us through some of the cool things that you're able to do remotely with these cars, or these panel vans, rather.
Yes, it's very exciting for us. So we are able to throttle the vehicles remotely. Actually, the Woolies vehicles, just for interest's sake, we've throttled them by 40%, because if you've ever been in an electric vehicle, it's instant torque, so you almost fly off.
Oh, they're lovely to drive. Yeah.
They're really great to drive. So we've had to pull back a little bit to save on our tires, but also to save on, increase our range of the vehicle. So you're able to do that. You're also able to monitor the quality of power that's coming into your vehicle. So a lot of the times we find that after periods of load shedding, if you connect your vehicle, your charger might go down and not restart again when the electricity comes back. Say we are charging overnight. So we are able to sort of manage that remotely, and we then can start a charge remotely. The other thing that we're able to do, we're able to sort of manage the time of use of the power that our clients use. So between 4 and let's say 7, electricity is at the most expensive for them. So even if they do put a gun to into the vehicle to try and charge the vehicle, we will not start the charge until it's much cheaper to do so after 7. So we're able to sort of manage for those kind of things with the IT layer.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And then lastly, you've said that you are now in the growth phase of your business. Maybe take us through what that's going to look like. Where do you see this business going in the next 3 to 5 years?
So, I mean, if you look at the universe of the fleets in South Africa, we're talking in the hundreds, in the thousands of units that are currently running in the country. I mean, so that is sort of the market that we are targeting. I mean, if we have to go back to Woolworths as a business as well, they have growth plans to go into KZN and etc. So there's that, but there's also us bringing other types of vehicles into our network, say the bigger vehicles and even smaller into the sedans, the hatchbacks, for us to grow even, the offering that the business would be able to take out there into the market. So we really see that right now we might be at about 100 or just over 100 vehicles on South African roads with different clients, but we see that really growing, first in fleet, also, probably someday we'll move from being a business to business entity to being B2C and growing in that way. But we really, our focus is really electric mobility as a service.
Amazing. Yeah. Great. Let me attempt your name again.
Ndia
Magadagela, thank you. Is co-founder and CEO of Everlectric. What is your website address, by the way?
It's www.everlectric.co.za.
Great. Yeah. Ndia, thank you so much for talking to TechCentral.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure.
Appreciate it. Thanks.